Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful for You channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. In a moment that would go down as one of the most jaw-dropping, tension-saturated interruptions in the Bold and the Beautiful's history, Sheila Carter appeared at Hope and Liam's wedding and unleashed 7 shocking words that detonated through the ceremony like an emotional bomb, shattering the fragile peace that Hope Logan had tried so desperately to protect and forcing Liam Spencer into a state of dread that clawed straight through his chest, because even before she fully stepped into the aisle, even before she pulled back the veil of her new, strangely serene exterior, everyone could sense that Sheila wasn't there simply to cause chaos. She was there because she believed she had something so monumental, so life-altering, that she simply could not stay hidden any longer. And the gasp that rippled across the crowd was only the beginning of the fallout as Steffi, Ridge, Brooke, Taylor, Deacon, and even Finn froze like they had been suddenly thrown into a labyrinth where every path led to disaster, and Hope's hand trembled around her bouquet, her eyes darting between Liam and Sheila as she whispered in disbelief, "This can't be happening," while Sheila, standing tall and almost unnervingly calm in a dark emerald dress that looked more appropriate for a royal summit than a wedding crash, slowly raised her head and spoke the 7 words that would redefine every relationship in the room. "I'm here because the truth changes everything," a sentence that slammed through the chapel like a hurricane, instantly sending Brooke into protective mother mode as she rushed in front of Hope and hissed that Sheila had no right to be here, no right to append this day, no right to breathe the same air as her family, while Ridge and Taylor both instinctively moved to shield Steffi and Finn, though Finn looked more confused than defensive, sensing, deep in the unspoken rift he had been trying for months to mend, that his adoptive mother's sudden appearance meant this was bigger than a simple wedding sabotage, and Liam, already sweating, suddenly felt his thoughts spinning because Sheila's cryptic declaration could mean anything: another baby lie, another paternity reveal, a murder accusation, a secret alliance, a medical disaster, or something so deeply rooted in the past that no one could see it coming. And the way Sheila clutched a tiny envelope in her hand only intensified the terror as Deacon Sharp, torn between the woman he once loved and the new future he was painfully building, stepped closer and demanded to know what she thought she was doing, but Sheila, instead of cowering, simply let out a slow breath and said that she had spent months, maybe years, trying to stay away, trying to honor Finn's wishes, trying to let Hope and Deacon live their lives without her overshadowing them, but that some truths cannot stay buried. Some revelations refuse to die, and she was done being silent, done being erased, done letting everyone else control the narrative of her existence, which made Steffi snap that she wasn't here to reclaim anything, that she was a threat, a manipulator, a woman who destroyed everything she touched. But Sheila's eyes softened, not with manipulation but with something startling, something almost vulnerable, as she whispered that what she had to reveal today was not an attack but a responsibility. And suddenly the entire room realized that Sheila wasn't shaking, wasn't laughing, wasn't smirking. Instead, she looked like someone standing on the edge of a cliff, preparing to leap into the unknown, and that was what made Finn, for the first time since she entered, take one cautious step toward her, asking quietly, "Mom, what truth?" And Sheila's lips trembled just slightly as she extended the envelope and said that inside it was proof, undeniable, irrefutable proof, that someone in this room had been lying. Someone who had orchestrated a betrayal so devastating that it would dismantle the very foundation of this wedding, this family, this entire chaotic tapestry of love and rivalry. And as Hope clutched Liam's arm, terrified that this was somehow about her, somehow about Beth, or Douglas, or Thomas, Sheila slowly lifted her gaze and allowed her eyes to settle directly on Liam Spencer, freezing him in place as if she had turned him to stone, and she said in a low, echoing tone that those 7 words, "I'm here because the truth changes everything," were only the beginning, because what she was about to expose would force Liam to answer for something he had hidden for far too long, something that involved Hope, Steffi, Finn, and a chain reaction of secrets that were about to erupt like a volcano in the middle of what was supposed to be a picture-perfect wedding. And in that frozen silence, where even the chandeliers seemed to tremble, Sheila opened the envelope with agonizing slowness, and Liam's breath hitched as if he already knew that whatever was inside would destroy the illusion he had tried so hard to maintain, the illusion of being reformed, honest, committed, trustworthy, because deep down he had always known that truth was his enemy, not Sheila, and now the woman everyone feared had arrived, not to shoot a gun, not to steal a baby, not to beg for forgiveness, but to force the truth into the light in front of everyone he cared about. And as Sheila began to pull out the first sheet of paper, Hope whispered Liam's name with a fear that sliced him open, while Steffi's eyes narrowed, sensing instinctively that Liam was hiding something big, something that might explain the strange tension he'd carried for weeks, and thus the ceremony dissolved into a battlefield of suspicion, dread, and anticipation as Sheila prepared to reveal everything. As the crisp sound of the paper sliding free filled the suffocating silence of the room, Sheila held it trembling between her fingers, though the trembling wasn't fear, but the weight of what she was about to unleash, and Liam could feel sweat gather at the back of his neck because he knew that whatever Sheila had discovered, whatever she was about to expose, was going to demolish every carefully reconstructed wall he had built around his life with hope, every patch of progress he had claimed. Every speech about being a changed man, because underneath his polished surface still lived the same impulses that had driven him for years, the same selfish decisions that left Hope broken and Steffi shattered, and Sheila, of all people, had somehow become the carrier of the truth he most feared. And while Ridge barked for Carter to escort Sheila out and Brooke snapped for security, Sheila's voice sliced through the chaos like a knife as she said, "No one is touching me until you hear this." And even Ridge, who hated her more than almost anyone alive, paused because there was something about Sheila's tone, cold, resolute, almost maternal in its gravity, that suggested this was not one of her typical manipulative stunts but something devastatingly real. And Finn took another tentative step forward, his voice soft but firm as he urged her to calm down and explain, though even he sensed the enormity of what she was holding, and Sheila nodded once before lifting the page higher and saying that she had not come here to blow up a wedding out of spite or jealousy but because she had stumbled across something that made it impossible for her to remain silent, something that tied together the late-night phone calls, the unexplained disappearances, the tension in Liam's smile, and the way he had been lying to everyone, Hope, Steffi, Finn, and even Ridge and Brooke, about something that carried consequences far deeper than a simple emotional betrayal. And at those words Hope's face went pale, as though every muscle in her body suddenly lost its strength, while Brooke grabbed her daughter's hand like she feared Hope might collapse, and Steffi's expression hardened into something sharp, something suspicious and unforgiving, because her history with Liam had taught her one thing: if Sheila claimed Liam was hiding something, there was at least a 50% chance it was true. And Sheila slowly unfolded the paper, her voice trembling with a cocktail of determination and dread as she said that the first truth everyone needed to hear was this: Liam Spencer knew something about Luna Nozawa before anyone else did, a sentence that detonated through the room like a shockwave, making Steffi stumble back as Finn's eyes widened in disbelief because Luna was the last name anyone expected to hear at this wedding. And yet there it was, spilling from Sheila's lips like the spark that would ignite a forest fire. And Sheila continued, revealing that Liam had known for weeks, long before Luna's breakdown, long before the shooting, long before the chaos that consumed Finn's life, that Luna had not only been spiraling psychologically but had direct contact with someone Liam refused to identify, a contact who pushed Luna over the edge and connected back to a secret Liam had buried for months. And at this revelation Hope gasped, whispering Liam, no, as she searched his eyes for denial, but Liam remained frozen, unable to speak, because the truth, his truth, was tangled so deeply that he didn't know how to untangle it without destroying every relationship around him. And Steffi, suddenly furious and shaking, demanded Sheila explain exactly what Liam had done, but Sheila shook her head and said that the truth wasn't just about Luna, but about something Liam had done long before her breakdown. Something that tied back to a conversation he had with Bill Spencer on a night no one knew about, and that detail instantly jolted Ridge because he knew Bill, knew that every clandestine meeting Bill had usually contained scheming, manipulation, or some level of corruption. And Sheila then said the 7 words that would forever echo in the minds of everyone present, words that were even more shocking than her initial statement, words that sliced Hope to her knees and left Liam's soul hollow. Liam lied about Luna to protect himself. Those 7 words, simple, brutal, and devastating, sent shock throughout the room as if someone had detonated explosives beneath the floor, and while Ridge roared in outrage, calling Sheila a liar, Steffi stared at Liam with growing horror because Liam's face told the truth his mouth refused to speak, and Hope felt her heart shatter as she whispered, "Tell me she's wrong, Liam, please," her voice cracking with the desperation of a woman realizing her wedding might be collapsing before it even truly began, and Sheila pressed forward, revealing that she had proof Liam had intercepted a message meant for Finn, a message that could have changed everything before Luna spiraled, and Liam's jaw tightened as if he were fighting the urge to deny everything, but guilt flooded his eyes before he could mask it, causing Steffi to choke out, "You knew something that could have stopped all of this," and Finn's voice, usually calm, steady, compassionate, shook with betrayal as he asked Liam to explain what message Sheila was talking about, and Sheila raised the letter higher, saying that inside this envelope was a printed copy of the message Liam had intercepted, a message revealing that Luna had reached out to Finn weeks earlier in a moment of clarity and fear, begging for help, warning him that she was being manipulated and monitored, but Liam, terrified that Finn getting involved would bring Luna back into Steffi's orbit and reopen every wound Liam had never truly healed, chose to hide the message rather than alert Finn, and at this revelation Steffi let out a sound that was half gasp, half cry, while hope covered her mouth in horror, and Finn stepped backward like someone had punched him, because the idea that Luna might have been saved, might never have spiraled, might never have pulled a gun, might never have left chaos and heartbreak scattered across their lives, destroyed him, and Sheila's voice cracked as she said she had originally planned to take this evidence to Finn privately, but when she realized Liam was about to publicly vow honesty and devotion to Hope, she couldn't let him stand there and make promises he had already destroyed with his lies, and Liam, his voice finally breaking free, shouted that it wasn't that simple, that he hadn't meant for things to escalate, that he had been trying to protect everyone, but Steffi screamed back that he had protected no one, that he had only protected himself, that he had played God with Luna's fate and Finn's life and Hope's future, and the room erupted into layers of chaos, Ridge yelling over Brooke, Deacon pleading with Sheila, Carter trying to restore order, Finn shaking with devastation, Steffi trembling with rage, Hope feeling the ground fall away beneath her feet, as Sheila stood her ground, still holding the evidence that proved Liam Spencer's greatest betrayal wasn't infidelity or emotional manipulation, but silence, cowardice, and a selfish decision that changed the course of multiple lives. As the shouting elongated into a storm vibrating off the walls of the wedding venue, Hope swayed on her feet, feeling as though Sheila had peeled away her reality layer by layer, exposing not just Liam's latest betrayal but the truth about who he had always been, someone who didn't change, someone who masked selfishness with righteous speeches and promises he couldn't keep, and the bouquet slipped from her fingers as if her hands refused to hold on to anything connected to the illusion of this wedding, landing softly on the aisle runner while Brooke steadied her trembling daughter and whispered that they could end this ceremony, that Hope didn't need to endure another heartbreak, that she didn't need to give Liam another chance to wreck her life, but Hope couldn't answer because her entire body felt cold, hollowed out, as she remembered every moment she had defended him, every time she had told herself that he had grown, that he had evolved, that his days of living between two women were behind him, but now she could see, crystal clear, that Liam hadn't changed at all, not in the ways that mattered, and what Sheila revealed wasn't a fluke or a mistake, it was a pattern, a deeply ingrained pattern of Liam pulling the strings behind the scenes, choosing what truths to hide and what lies to let breathe, and Steffi, normally composed even in crisis, looked seconds away from either lunging at Liam or collapsing entirely, her voice sharp and shaking as she shouted that Liam had robbed Finn of the chance to help his daughter, that he had robbed Steffi of the chance to understand Luna's descent, that he had let Luna spiral alone while pretending to be the moral compass of Los Angeles, and Finn's breath grew ragged as he whispered to Steffi that this changed everything, not simply about Luna but about Liam's role in the catastrophic chain of events that could have been prevented, and the guilt pouring off Liam made it clear that he knew it too, because everything inside him unraveled at once as he stammered that he didn't mean to cause harm, that he didn't know Luna's condition would deteriorate so drastically, that he didn't believe the message was real, that he thought Luna was manipulating Finn, but Sheila cut him off with a fierce, almost maternal fury none of them expected, insisting that Liam knew exactly what he was doing, that he intercepted the message because he feared Luna's problems would drag Finn closer to Steffi again, closer to the emotional territory Liam never fully surrendered, and in that moment Steffi's eyes widened, not with fear, but with realization, because she could practically hear Liam's thought process. If Finn became involved with Luna's crisis, Finn and Steffi would have to work together, lean on each other, reconnect emotionally, and Liam, terrified of that possibility, took action to disrupt it. And the certainty of that truth made Steffi's entire body freeze, because the idea that Liam had allowed Luna's life to collapse just to maintain emotional leverage over Steffi was so monstrous she could barely process it, and she whispered, "You did this, because of me," while her voice cracked with disgust, betrayal, and unimaginable revulsion, and Liam, unable to maintain eye contact, whispered her name like a god begging for mercy, but Steffi stepped back as if he were physically toxic, her eyes burning with the kind of hatred she had never shown him before, not even during their ugliest breakups, and Hope watched this with a dawning horror, realizing that while Liam had been preparing to marry her today, a part of him was still obsessively orbiting Steffi, still calculating how to keep Finn from pulling Steffi further away, still sabotaging anything that threatened his fantasy that one day Steffi might need him again, and that realization hit Hope harder than any betrayal Sheila could have exposed, because Hope finally saw the pattern. Liam had never truly been hers, not fully, not completely. Not in the ways she had convinced herself he was, and tears finally spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, "You were still choosing her, even while promising yourself to me," and Brooke hugged her daughter tightly, glaring at Liam with a maternal rage so fierce it nearly eclipsed Steffi's, because Liam had humiliated Hope before and yet here she was, trying to build a future with him, only to discover he had once again dragged her into his emotional labyrinth, and Deacon, who had initially tried to restrain Sheila, now stared at Liam with a mixture of disappointment and grim understanding, because Deacon knew what it was like to make terrible choices, but even he couldn't comprehend how Liam allowed an obviously unstable girl, Luna, to suffer in silence just to protect his messy emotional grip on Steffi, and Finn, shaking with grief and fury, stepped forward and demanded that Liam look at him, demanded that Liam acknowledge that this wasn't just a lie, this was negligence, cowardice. A betrayal that had cost lives, a betrayal that shattered families, and as Liam finally looked up, tears burning in his eyes, Finn said with a trembling voice that Luna might still be alive, or stable, or healthy, if Liam hadn't kept her message from reaching the one person who could have saved her, and the weight of those words broke something inside the room, broke the ceremony, broke the bonds, broke the illusion that any of them were untouched by the fallout, because suddenly the wedding arch, the flowers, the vows, the music, all felt grotesque, like decorations sitting atop a graveyard of secrets, and Sheila, still gripping the evidence, took a small step back as if preparing for the next eruption, her chest rising with the adrenaline of everything she had unleashed, but also with a grief she hadn't expected, because even Sheila, Queen of Chaos, architect of countless disasters, felt the heaviness in the air as Hope stared at Liam as if he were a stranger wearing her fiancé's face, and Steffi held Finn's arm as though she feared he might collapse under the weight of what Luna's final days could have been, and Ridge, normally the loudest voice in the room, stood silently with tears in his eyes, knowing the ripple effect of Liam's actions would haunt their families for years, and Brooke whispered that she never trusted Liam, never believed he could truly change, and Sheila, watching it all unfold, whispered one more truth, soft, defeated, but undeniable, saying that she had come here today expecting everyone to attack her, to blame her, to expel her from the room, but she never expected that for once, she would be the one telling the truth while Liam Spencer was the one tearing their families apart, as Sheila's final words lingered in the air. Like smoke after an explosion, the entire room existed in a state somewhere between disbelief and emotional paralysis, everyone trying to absorb the magnitude of what had just been exposed, and Hope, still trembling in Brooke's arms, forced herself to step out of her mother's hold and face Liam directly, her eyes red, her expression hollow, the devastation etched across her face so raw that even Ridge softened, because no one, no matter how complicated the families had become, wanted to see Hope Logan shattered like this on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, and she whispered Liam's name again, but this time there was no pleading, no begging for clarity, no desperate hope for a lie to soothe the wound. Instead, her whisper was a quiet acknowledgement of something she already knew she couldn't escape. Liam had once again proven incapable of holding her heart without destroying it, and Liam, broken and shaking, tried to take a step toward her, but Carter immediately moved between them, not out of aggression but out of necessity, because Hope looked so fragile, so heartbreakingly undone, that no one trusted Liam to go near her without making it worse, and Hope lifted one trembling finger and pointed at him as she asked, barely audible, How could you let someone suffer just to keep Steffi in your orbit? A question so brutally candid that Liam visibly recoiled, for the truth lay exposed between each word, each feeble justification he attempted to construct. In his mind, Steffi, upon hearing her name invoked as the focal point of Liam's selfishness, experienced a profound, nauseating revulsion surge through her, having spent years ensnared in Liam's emotional triangle, striving for her family, contending with hope in cycles that repeated with cruel predictability. The realization that Liam had obstructed Luna's plea for assistance to maintain a distorted emotional connection with Steffi revealed a horrifying truth. Liam was not merely indecisive or confused, he was emotionally perilous, capable of manipulating entire families to retain control over the women he loved. Finn, now trembling with grief and disgust, whispered, "You intercepted that message from my daughter who was pleading for help, and you concealed it?" His voice faltered, prompting Steffi to instinctively grasp his arm, as the anguish emanating from him was excruciating to observe. Liam, now weeping openly, stuttered that he had not anticipated such a deterioration, believed Luna was overstating the situation, and wished to prevent Finn from being ensnared in the turmoil once more. However, Steffi interjected sharply, her tone cutting through the atmosphere like shattered glass, "It was not your decision to make.